All right, welcome back to Quid Pro Fro. I'm your founder and host, Antoine Stevens Phillips. I'm so happy to be back with you all to bring you another episode. This will be episode 3. And in this episode, we'll be talking to a brother that has some history as an American illustrator and has some history growing up in America and relocating to a part of the world that I'll tell you about in just a little bit. So before I go a little too far, let me introduce the guest. Our guest today is Chance McGee. Chance, as I said, Chance is an American illustrator based in Germany. He has worked as a freelance illustrator and animator for various companies, including Netflix, AMD, and Six Flags. His career started in live caricature drawing and has expanded to encompass many other forms of visual facilitation. He currently serves on the board of International Forum for Visual Practitioners, IFVP. And as a side note, he really enjoys Mexican food, but sometimes find it challenging to find in Germany.
I'm so glad you
So
said that last sentence. Thank you. But yeah,
yeah. So without further ado, Chance, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Antoine, thank you so much for the opportunity to just, chat with you and discuss ideas and to be here with your amazing audience. So I'm good. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And before we go a little further, let me turn all of the volumes up real quick. Boom, we good. All right. So again, thank you for being here. I know we're gonna have as usual, have a fun informative conversation. This time, obviously, for the audience. So I'm gonna go to the first question. How did you get involved in becoming an illustrator? Um, but as I read, also, like, how did you get involved in live caricature?
Right. Yeah. That's such a good question. For me, I think for most artists, we have the same answer to that question. We
Yeah,
just never stopped doing art. Like I think everybody as a kid, everybody was an artist at some point. It's natural to pick up a marker and start drawing or some crayons. You do your first
yeah.
Mona Lisa on the wall at home. Your parents are kind of like mad, So it's like we have
Right.
that history. And what tends to happen is at some point, some people find other things, right? They get really into, dancing or, music or, just, ideas associated with history. They start to develop an identity based on being a leadership, captain in certain teams, sports. And it takes them to different places. And I think for me, it was just continuing that and there was never a point where I didn't see myself as an illustrator or some form of or artist, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So would you say that you initially uh got involved in like caricature from a young age up and eventually were you like on a caricature team or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. So the caricature story is interesting. There's two parts to it. The first part is my father
Okay.
and the O.J. Simpson trial,
Okay.
um, which had a lot to do with my whole like interest in drawing faces.
Yeah.
And the second part is the first job I got as a professional artist at the age of 15. So just to go to that first part,
Yeah.
um, O.J. Simpson. I don't know how old your audience is, but that was a big deal when I was like 11 or 12. We were about the same age, so we remember
Yeah. Yeah.
around
Oh
11 or
yeah.
12 years old, this stuff was on TV. We weren't old enough to really understand the implications, but we just saw our parents like talking about it, right? And having very interesting opinions about things that we didn't really know a whole lot about.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home one day and my father had hung up a bunch of little drawings that he did from the O.J. Simpson trial because the only way that the news media was able to talk about it was through showing these drawings of the
Oh,
trial.
okay.
And so my
Okay.
father, he was very immersed in it. He was watching it all the time and he just started drawing some of the pictures he saw. And I remember
Nice.
coming home and seeing these pictures hanging up. I'm like, whoa, who did this? My daddy
Yeah.
was like, yeah, boy, I can draw. I can draw. I was like, dang, daddy, you can draw.
That's
I'm sure
pretty
if I
dope,
went,
man.
so, I'm sure if I go back, if I look at those drawings now, I probably wouldn't be as impressed. But the impression it had on me to know that my dad created this was like, it blew my mind. And I think my father saw something in me,
Yeah.
the way that I reacted to him, because from that moment on, he became very supportive of the arts in me, because he knew somehow like he was connected to it and he really wanted to foster that. So that's the first part of it.
Yeah.
And like whenever guests would come over our house, like he would insist that I draw them. Like, my son can draw, go ahead, sit down, Chance, draw him. Like, okay, just be forced to draw people, like 13
Yeah.
years old, like drawing people I never met. So I remember doing that like as a kid. And then I got a job at Six Flags Over Texas, this place that you mentioned. That was my
Okay.
first job working as an artist. And
Okay.
I must have been like 15 or 16 when I got that job. And
Yeah.
it was a very incredible environment to be in, because I was around people who at that time I just thought they were like old people, but really in hindsight they were like late 20s, early 30s. They had just graduated from college. So they were really good illustrators and artists. Some of them even were working freelance for Disney and doing stuff that I thought was really cool. And these were
Hmm.
the people who were training me to draw caricatures. And
Hmm.
I remember the feeling I felt watching them draw, because caricatures in a theme park is very different than caricatures on the covers of magazines. Because in a theme park, you get a
Yeah.
blank sheet of paper and you just draw with a marker what you see. And in
Yeah.
5 minutes, you're done. And I'm just like, that looked like something out of like a Mad magazine. And bro just did that with no under
Right.
pencil, nothing, And these are the people who are teaching me. So that was my entry point into caricature, and kind of like launched my whole identity of being a professional artist.
That's really dope. I appreciate you sharing that. Because I remember when when I first met my lady, when I first met her, I decided to, take her back to the Midwest, to Detroit, to meet my family and what have you. And we decided to go to the Six Flags and I believe it was like Toledo, Ohio, or something like that. They have like a Six Flags there, and we're walking around. I'm not getting on no roller coasters. I'm watching, my girl and my sisters get on the roller coasters and whatever. I'm watching them and having fun. They're like, okay, is there something that you want to do here, other than just watch us have fun on the roller coasters? And I was like, you know what, let's go get a drawing.
What? That's I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah, my lady and I, we went to go sit down, get a drawing, and exactly what you're saying. There was this young, like, high school student, probably anywhere between 14 and 16. We sat down for no more than 5 to 10 minutes, and they started drawing us. And when they were drawing, my wife, um, they were starting off regular or whatever. And so I said, you know what? Let me see where this goes. So I stopped watching them from behind and I just kind of watched from the side. And by the time they showed us, they had not only captured her in a phenomenal way, they were able to, we switched seats. The person added me to the caricature and just like really drew this,
Oh wow.
imaginary, like sketching. And I was so amazed. It really, at that time, it kind of encouraged me to do some sketching here and there or whatever. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I
yeah,
never got to the appropriate levels that I would say, I'm like, all right, let me go a little further from here.
yeah,
But the caricature that came out was just so phenomenal. It was so creative, and
yeah,
the artist was pulling out like qualities in in the piece that
yeah,
reflected, our emotions at the time, because this person didn't know us. But
yeah, yeah,
I was so surprised that, they were pulling out certain emotional, um little nuances in the piece. So I was super happy with it, and we both were like shocked, like, wow, this is a high school student drawing at this level,
Yeah.
So I
So you guys,
definitely,
you had a good
you know,
experience. Your first caricature was a good experience because
it
sometimes
was
people
a
get a bad experience with their first caricature. And I'm so
right.
happy to know you got a good experience. That makes me happy.
Yeah, man, we got a really good experience, and it encouraged me, even leaving Six Flags in Ohio and coming back to Detroit. My lady and I, we would I was showing her around the city. There's a particular area called the River Walk in Detroit, and it's a river. And side tangent, it's a river that separates Detroit from Canada, and on the other side is Windsor. So you can walk this long trek, and there's a beautiful like beautiful scenery or whatever, and you have a lot of artists that are lined up along the Riverwalk because you have a lot of
Oh,
tourists there. So anytime, we went for that walk, I would stop and we would get another drawing done. So, my lady
what?
and I, we've got like at least three to five caricatures drawn, just posted up around our place,
Oh,
man.
okay, so
So
I'm talking to a connoisseur right now.
right,
Like I'm
right,
talking.
right.
It's very nice to meet one of you. You're always the best people to draw. Like
Right.
I got three of them at home. It's like okay, so you like and you know what we do. Thank you.
Yeah,
Please have a
man.
seat. I love talking to draw people like you. I love it. That's
You know
great.
it, man. Got to get them done,
Yeah,
man. I'm always impressed, man. So you're talking to a connoisseur for sure.
yeah, yeah. But you
Yeah.
know what that means? You know, if I draw you, I am
Yeah.
going to have to beast you. It
Okay.
will not
Okay.
be flattering because you're a connoisseur. You've gotten the nice, you get the cheese that's nice and easy to digest. But now you're
Yes.
starting to get into that stinky stuff to get that flavor,
Oh
that
yeah, you got to
real,
get into some of the brie cheeses.
yeah. So now we can do like the real crazy stuff now. So that's good to know. That's good to know.
Okay, we gonna have to make that happen. We gonna have to make that
Yes,
happen.
definitely for sure.
So my next question, you answered how you were inspired and and learned of your father having some skills drawing during the OJ case, which even though we were teens, we kind of saw some wild images with that. So the fact that he sat down, was etching it out and then, kind of putting it up around the house for you to see and get inspired. That's really awesome. So I won't ask that question. You answered that. My next question is, which audiences are most drawn to your style of illustration? Are you finding that children are most drawn, teenagers, adults, seniors? Which age bracket would you say is most gravitates the most to your style?
That's a really good question. It's a good question because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And the answer is I actually have two audiences. And
Okay.
but knowing that I have two audiences sometimes causes me to feel split sometimes. And I find, for example, like on LinkedIn, I'm not posting my caricature stuff on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a place where I discuss ideas associated with visual facilitation, graphic facilitation, infographics, animation. That's where all that stuff exists on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And Instagram is the audience that I connect with other artists on. So when it comes
Mhm.
to caricatures, like the audience are other artists,
Okay.
mostly younger artists, like the kind of artists that I was when I first started drawing, but also other peers in the community of caricature artists because it's a huge international community. And I'm actually based out of Germany. Maybe I don't know if I'm spilling the
No, no, go
beans.
ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm based out of Germany right now,
Mhm.
and the caricature art community is an international community, but there's
Mhm.
different flavors depending on what nation you're in. In America, the flavor of caricature is one of, to be frank, I would say it's typified by Disney, the kind of
Okay.
cartoon, thick outline marker, kind of expressive drawing that tends to express the tone of caricature in America. over the like Mad Magazine. Everybody's familiar with Mad
Yeah.
Magazine, big ears, you know, the funny
Yeah.
drawings, the parody of, you know, presidents, you know, doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. That's kind of the style of caricature in America. But what's been happening in Europe, the style is very much pencil. You're doing these pencil
Mm,
portrait type of drawings. They're more
okay.
portraits and you kind of exaggerate features in a subtle way. And so what I've found is that when I was in America, my caricatures were very, you know, American. And I've been in
Yeah.
Germany now for 11 years. I've been doing caricatures for the past 6 in Germany. And I'm finding
Okay.
that my caricatures are becoming more portraity in the sense that I'm
Yeah.
focusing a lot more on proportionality. I'm focusing a lot more on subtle energy in the person as opposed to big energy, like, oh, you got big old eyes. I'm gonna make you with big eyes, and oh, you got a big mouth. I'll make you with a big mouth, and you know, oh, you got
Yeah.
pointy ears, you know, and you do that, you know, in this funny way, and it's funny, it's great, you know, it makes
Yeah.
people laugh, and that's all it's meant to do. It's not meant to be the Mona Lisa,
Right.
but there's something about that subtle energy that came out when I started working in Europe around other Europeans,
Yeah.
and I'm at a stage right now where I'm more interested in that subtle energy in
Okay.
art. And so the audiences that I tend to attract primarily are, you know, younger artists, mostly based out of America because my style is more American than anything else, on, you know, Instagram with caricatures. But there's been a shift in the caricature art community basically since TikTok came out. And
Hmm.
TikTok has kind of shifted the landscape so that reactions become the thing that you're selling. Because
Okay.
when you show a drawing, like you're not paying for the drawing, you're paying for the, are you ready? Here you go. And that moment where you
Yeah.
realize, like, whoa, bro, I'm not that fat. You know, like that's what you're paying for. This
Right.
moment of the reveal, right? And now
Right.
with you know things like social media, specifically TikTok,
Yeah.
it's been recording those reactions. And so now the reaction becomes the thing that people identify with caricature. And if you want to get a good reaction, you know, big mouths, crazy stuff. And people are doing crazier and crazier and crazier things. And it's funny,
Right.
but a part of me is like we're losing some of that subtlety, you know, because we're
Yeah.
trying to get the bigger reaction. So I kind of, you know, stay somewhere in between. But
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And let me make sure I understand what you're saying. When you say subtlety, are you saying like less slapstick and like more more like more intelligent, more educated? Because what sometimes what I see out here is a lot of slapstick. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I like classical art. You know, I enjoy, you know, classical art, classical fine art where you do have some irony and some metaphors in the illustration, but it's done in a way that challenges your cognition, your cognitive side. You know,
Mm-hmm.
whereas you know we live in a time where you know there is slapstick heavy. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get an idea when you say
That's,
subtle.
man, you know,
You know,
and this is the subject of my investigation.
yeah,
So my way of thinking about what you're asking me is specifically what I'm trying to figure out, because
okay,
what and the thing about art, and this is what's interesting about art in general, whether it's music, dance, poetry, whatever form a person expresses themselves in, the aspect of creating the work is separate than the work that's done. And so a
mm,
lot of times, you know, if you're looking at artwork from the standpoint of consumerism, like you're consuming art, you're not as
yeah,
interested in the creation of it, right?
right, right,
And if you're looking at work with the lens of how was this created, how do I recreate it, right?
yeah,
Which is the lens that an artist perceives art. What ends
hmm,
up happening is you start to ask questions based on what is it that is allowing this artist to channel this creative ability, because the end result, this thing
yeah,
that can be consumed or can be appreciated, and it depends on
hmm,
who's looking at it. And most of the
hmm,
time, it's a little bit of both. You know, they're not mutually exclusive, and neither neither way is a necessary insult to the work. It's
Right.
meant to be consumed and appreciated to certain degrees.
Mm-hmm.
But the amount of appreciation that can be derived from a work is reflected in the process that was created, that actually was used to create it. And if the process that's used to create a piece of work is one that's based on what is it that I currently in this moment am discovering,
Mm-hmm.
then that's what's reflected in the end result, the product that's being sold. What's being
Mm-hmm.
sold is a discovery, a
Mm-hmm.
realization, an
Mm-hmm.
expression of something that wasn't known before that became known. And when it's
Yep.
shown to the person is like, oh yeah, obviously. It's almost like they remember something they forgot. Like, oh yeah, that is what I look like. Oh, that's funny. You're right.
Right.
Yeah, right. You know,
Right.
there's that moment of realization, right?
That moment of
Um,
that's where I left my keys type thing.
yeah, exactly. Right. Oh, that's right. I left him at daddy house, right? So there,
Right.
there's that moment, but then it's like the amount of appreciation that can be derived from a work, and I'm just stressing what I said before, is a reflection of the amount of appreciation that was put in it. And so when I say subtlety, I mean a deeper appreciation for what is being observed and a deeper appreciation for understanding it. There's a more
Yeah.
what's expressed as intimacy in creation,
Mm-hmm.
and what we call the end product, we describe that as being more subtle or being more artistic, and we use these words to describe something that doesn't exist in the end product.
Right.
It's not there. It exists in the creation of it. And so, what
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding with the Europeans is that there tends to be more awareness of what
Mm.
stands out in a subtler way, an appreciation for those differences. And what I find in America
Yeah.
is an interest in pushing the boundaries of what is
Okay.
there, pushing
Yeah.
them as far as they can go. You take what's there, you see it, and you push it away in ways that nobody would recognize.
Yeah.
One is better for consumption, the other is better for appreciation. Neither is better or less, but you see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
different styles. So you're telling me that if you're doing a caricature of me and I have a small piece of lint on my shirt, you're gonna find some way to make that lint, illuminated or highlighted or something like that. I'm just joking. I'm joking.
Yeah, no, but it's something like that, something like that, something like that. You know, it depends on who you are. You know,
Yeah.
the appreciation exists in the exchange between the artist and what's being created. That's where the
Yeah.
appreciation exists, right? So if I'm drawing you and I'm having a discussion with you, and I can
Yeah.
tell like you're having a tough day, like you're not really talkative, then I'm probably
Yeah.
gonna draw you looking kind of like a little bit upset. I'm capturing this moment, I'm capturing this essence of you right now, right? But if I
Yeah.
catch you on a day where you just you had a really good dinner with your wife and you got some things happening in life, you're excited, and you just happen to
Yeah.
spontaneously find me and you're like, whoa, what's going on, and we have this funny exchange. I'm capturing that essence, right? That's,
Yeah.
you see what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's what I'm focusing on is the revelation of who you are and ways to express that, as opposed to what I see when I see you, which is how far your eyes are from you know, your nose and how pointy, those things. Those things
Yeah.
stand
The
out, man.
geometry. Okay. So it sounds like with the subtlety, it sounds like you're looking more for the aura that the person that illuminates the person in that moment versus paying so much attention to the physical geometry and the aesthetics, which is very important. You can't lose that, but it's the aura and the spirit of the person in that moment, or some might say, where the feelings and emotions of that person lie, that really helps to bring out harmony and bring out the poetry of a
Absolutely.
piece. So that's interesting, man. And I'm always fascinated about how artists are able to um bring these layers together, bring the aesthetics and the physical geometry, as well as what you're saying, looking for the subtlety, looking for what is the color of a person's aura in this moment? Is it mellow? Is it a little saddened or dark, or is it bright? Is it lively? Is it vibrant? You know, is it
Mm.
bursting? You know,
Mm.
so that's pretty cool, man. So I'm gonna go to my next question. Um, so you shared and we shared that you are currently based in Germany, but there's some folks uh within my audience that would like to know what was the transition that deciding to, you know, leave America where you were born and raised and deciding, you know what, I'm going to pursue my career in Germany, in Europe. You know, what was that transition like for you? And you know, what advice would you give for American young uh, uh, illustrators looking to explore a career opportunity on another continent in a different part of the world?
That's such a good question. It's such a good question. And if I
Yeah.
feel like if you would have asked me that a year ago, I wouldn't have been able to give you a good answer.
Okay.
Because for a long time I wasn't really sure what I'm doing here. You know, like why
You're-
am I here? You know, like
right.
because to be frank, like my intention wasn't to stay here. I liked
Okay.
the idea of traveling. I've always had the idea of going abroad and seeing things and traveling and exploring. And a big part of that was studying under some of the best classical artists, which frankly are located in Europe.
Okay.
For those classical artists like the arteliers that you can actually still find in places like Portugal, Italy. Those are the areas that I was most interested
Okay.
in terms of furthering my artistic development. But I ended up in Germany, which wasn't
Okay.
really, the place that I visualized on the map. But what ended up happening is, I was working for a nonprofit, and I had the opportunity to visit our German office. My
Mhm.
wife now, who I
Yes.
met in America, was based in the German office. She's from Germany. She's actually born in Poland, but she was running the
Okay.
German operation, grew up in Germany. We met in America. I had the opportunity to visit her, and I stayed there for a long time, helping the nonprofit organization here.
Yeah.
And I found myself doing things that I I always wanted to do, but the problem was that I was more isolated in Europe because in America, everybody speaks English and I know the culture more, and it was more people to interact with, and they thought like me. Artists. I was very American.
Yeah.
And when I came to Europe, it was different. People really appreciate personal workspace, being lost in the act of creation.
Mm.
The idea of working together in a room with a bunch of different artists, that's not really something that appeals to, animators and graphic designers here. They prefer to have their own space and to get lost in their own mind.
Okay.
Um, and that was something that began to rub off on me. And it wasn't until COVID
Okay.
and by then, I had been in Germany for about 6 years. And then COVID happened. And I had the opportunity to reevaluate what it is I wanted to do. And of all the things that I really, really wanted to do, I
Hmm.
wanted to do caricatures again. I really missed it. I
Okay.
hadn't been doing it for years, prior to COVID.
Yeah.
I had been on this other stuff, graphic design, a little bit of animation, but it wasn't really what I really enjoyed. It wasn't my passion. Um, and in Germany, it's the case that if you want to work in a field that uses your artistic talent or whatever it is you have to offer, you have to be employed. Taking the freelancer route or being a self like starting a business,
Yeah.
the challenge of doing that is and I might be a little biased, but I feel like it's more difficult in Germany as
Yeah.
opposed to
Okay.
America. Germany, really values, healthcare and workers' benefits and all these things that are associated with being an employee. But the minute you are no longer an employee, you decide to, follow your own path, those benefits don't exist. And not only do they not exist, but you're now entitled to
Mm.
finance those benefits because it's illegal to not have them. They're not benefits anymore. They become, these things that you're forced to pay into, not just for yourself, but the greater, social community. And so I found myself on the
Okay.
other side of, this argument about how the healthcare system and all these things are so much better. And, that's kind of a political issue, but,
Yeah.
I'm trying not to get too off point, but to answer the question more specifically, um, COVID allowed me to reassess what I wanted to do most. And I think it was the case for a lot of people. And I told myself I wanted to do animation on my terms, and I wanted
Yeah.
to draw people and make people laugh because I love doing that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do that in Germany. I don't know who's doing it, but I'm just going to do it. And my wife moved heaven and earth, flipped over every rock, and was like, you got to get this guy at your event. She put me in places that I didn't feel comfortable. I wasn't that comfortable with the language at that point, and
Okay.
I didn't know enough people. And my wife was pushing me. They said, behind every great man is a great woman, and it's like that definitely was the case with her. And it was a little uncomfortable at times. I was like, Kasha, like, let me get my portfolio. No, just go, just go.
Right.
Um, and it
Pushing
started
you
to
pretty
work.
hard.
He pushed me hard, and I'm so grateful for it. And
Yeah.
it allowed me to remember, aspects of myself that I had forgotten being in a foreign country, being a foreigner, and losing a lot of confidence. When you're a foreigner, you lose confidence in yourself. Things that
Mm.
are simple become a little bit more difficult. You start to
Yeah.
question your own capabilities. Being in a place where things are done this way and you're used to doing it that way, and you wonder why are people doing it this way instead, and they're wondering why you're doing it that way, and then there's this
Yeah.
miscommunication, which is all language is about. So
Yeah. Yeah, no,
so
that's a
somewhere
yeah.
in that response is an answer. I'm not exactly sure where. Maybe you can help me figure it out, but that's the shortest answer I can give to a very good question that I'm still trying to figure out. But Germany has become the place that allowed me to be essentially like the best version of me, and I'm so grateful that I'm here now. I'm so grateful. And I feel like at times, it would have been more difficult to be what I am in America, actually, because
Yeah.
no matter where I go, in every room I stand in every place that I am, I'm the only version of me.
Yeah.
And because I'm the only version of me, there is no expectation. There is only interest and subtle looks of confusion. And then suddenly amazement, which feels warranted, right? Like, of
You're
course,
right.
it's either going to be insane or amazing. It can't be normal because this isn't normal. And so it's
Right.
almost like it demands a higher, level of performance. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. That's that's a great response, and it really helps myself, and it also I'm sure will help the audience, kind of grapple with uh that experience of understanding that you have a legitimate skill, a legitimate talent that can be not only recognized, it can be celebrated, you know, around the world. And to find yourself making the decision to, to go to Europe and um to try your hand in Europe with support from your wife, that's pretty awesome, man. There's not a lot of folks that look like us that can say that you know they considered what opportunities employment and the market would have for us on another continent. Sometimes we're brought up to only think of America as the only place where we can find work. We can apply ourselves. We can put ourselves out there and earn a living. I know there's military and wealthier folks from our community that have those opportunities to travel around and explore what other countries and continents may have for us. So this conversation is very important because there's a large portion of my audience that, they've grown up in a particular city, inner city, or they've grown up in a particular state and they barely traveled outside the state, let alone
Right.
go to different parts of the country, and let alone go to another continent and set up shop and actually thrive there. So I appreciate those responses. Um, you know, One of the follow-up questions that I have is, do you see yourself living in Germany and working in Germany long term, or are you open to uh, going where career opportunities may take you? Would you see yourself relocating again, possibly to another country or continent because the opportunity is so good?
Absolutely. No, it's funny. That's such a good question, man. I'm a little bit I didn't know the discussion was gonna go here because I know the question you're asking on the surface is kind of like it's a good question to ask in the course of this interview, but it
Yeah.
hits a little bit harder because it's starting like that particular question is the question that, my wife and I have been discussing this a lot. Like, what is it that we want?
Okay.
Like, what do and by we, I mean, what do I want and what does she
Yes.
want? Right? We're two individual people who are working together,
Yeah.
but at the core of that question is always, what do you want? And if
Yes.
what you want is to fly halfway across the world and start something new because you feel like that's what you're being called to do, and that there's a, like, for example, the the very beautiful relationship between hip hop and anime
Mm.
has caused so much overlap between these two cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of Black people that find themselves in Asia, but especially in areas like Japan,
Yeah.
end up being enigmas of so many wild, I guess you could say, images of
Mm-hmm.
what we are, right?
Yeah.
And those images are a combination of everything good and everything bad. And then we find ourselves there as the one to set it straight. And we set it straight by being whatever we are, not by
Yep.
being what they want us to be or by being what we think we need to be as representatives of our community. No, be your greatest version of who you are. That
Yep.
sets the record straight. Because
Mm-hmm.
whatever you are, whatever weird thing you're into, or whatever thing that doesn't quite fit into the box that you're told you're supposed to be in, or whatever thing you feel like you're probably not ready to do yet, there's
Yeah.
probably someone wondering what that would look like.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Yep.
don't have the ability to imagine it. And so you
Yeah.
become the image of what that is. So the answer to that question, and if I could see myself going anywhere else, is simply yes. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And
Yeah.
I don't particularly feel connected to any geographic location. I'm
Okay.
very fond of Germany and the German language, and the school system, especially for younger kids. My two
Mm-hmm.
children are here, and
Okay.
so I have at this moment like a lot more commitment to being in Germany for the sake of my family.
Yes.
Um, but my mind is floating around the idea of possibly moving to Spain, for example, which is something that my
Mm.
wife and I discussed a lot.
Okay.
And I kind of see myself as in spirit a digital nomad that is
Okay.
married and has kids and is forced
Yeah.
to locate in one place. But my spirit is digital nomad. My spirit is to travel. So
Yeah. I like that. I
that is
like
the
that
answer to
term.
that question, Neeraj. Yeah.
The digital nomad. You gotta trademark that.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the term that's used a lot, but I find myself thinking of it more and more because it's how I feel.
Yeah. And we living during a time where, you know, we got so much flexibility with, you know, the current technology. You can do a presentation, you can do an interview, you can send your material all over the world, and when you have a big audience or a big event in person, maybe that's when you can take that flight or take that trip to be in person. Um, Something you mentioned earlier, you said when you were just uh, getting accustomed to getting your name out there and doing work in Germany, you were saying that there were some events that your wife, suggested that you invite this person to your event and what have you. So were you actually putting on events and trying to draw out collaborators and supporters and possibly investors? Were you putting on like community events and things like that?
Well, my first voyeur into the world of freelance, which is really where I decided to break away from, the safety net that I felt like was keeping me anchored into, something safe, but didn't allow me to grow the way I needed to. My
Mm-hmm.
first, transition into that was with caricatures. What I knew, it's what I enjoyed,
Mm-hmm.
and I just started looking for festivals. I just, my
Okay.
wife looked online and found a festival that wasn't that far from where we lived. It was called the Rotoboil Karl May Festival. And it's a funny festival because Karl May was an artist an author who wrote westerns, cowboy novels. And so
Okay.
this festival is cowboy themed.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there with my dad's cowboy hat. He had passed away not that
Okay.
long ago, and it's one of the few things I have from him was the cowboy hat he gave me. We
Okay.
I'm from Texas, and
Yeah.
it was this really emotional experience because I found myself. My wife was there to help me. That particular event that we did, I remember I must have made like I don't know, like $700, like an entire weekend drawn. I made like $700, and I remember thinking to
Oh,
myself,
nice.
"Wow, I can do this!" Like it felt like it felt like everything. This is before I had kids. This is before we had just got married. We were living in an apartment, and you know, uh, so that little shift, meant the world to me because my wife was there to support me a lot, and I just remember seeing her expression because she heard me talk about doing caricatures for years, like literally the whole time we were together. But she never
Yeah.
actually saw me do them live. She heard me I do a little
Oh,
bit here and there, but she
okay.
saw it, and she was so blown away by seeing the way people reacted to it, the interactions, how happy I was.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing I did was the Carmi Festival, and then from that moment on, I was just kind of looking for more festivals to go to draw characters at. And I started to find more and more. And at the beginning, I went out there with just a chair, my little
Mm-hmm.
drawing board, and like a
Yeah.
sign that my wife and I cut out. We cut out a paper. We made some
Yeah.
cardboard, we taped it up. I just wrote prices like $10 for black and white, 20 for
Yeah.
color. And I was out there, man. And it was so good. And looking back at it now, I wouldn't dare show those photos of what I was drawing and what my setup looked like because it's so like it's in my mind now it's unprofessional, but it was perfect. It was exactly what it needed to be because
Yeah.
I started it, and at that moment I wasn't completely obsessed with how perfect everything was. I just started it,
Yeah.
and that's the advice I would give to anybody who's thinking about doing it. Like, start where you are. Start
Mm-hmm.
where you are right now. Don't
Mm-hmm.
think about how everybody else is doing it. Oh, this guy's got a fancy 4K camera and they got really good studio equipment for recording. And, this guy has his own studio office and he has like, the newest computers or whatever. This guy has, a virtual, assistant, who's whatever. It's like, no, just start where you are with your
Start where you are.
phone, right? With your little paper or whatever it is you have, your little,
Yeah.
recording, whatever, your little music you make, start where you are and just go and let it be
Yeah.
what it's meant to be. Because it's going to be what it's meant to be as long as you get out the way.
Yep. That is some phenomenal advice. That's actually it. That takes me back to what a fellow alumni told me when I was at SDSU. I was actually interviewing him because one of the things that I was doing to just to kind of like sharpen my skills with, having uh, really informative yet interviews and conversations that moved. I was working at SDSU as a public affairs specialist, and I was finding students on campus who were doing amazing things. Students who were starting their own business, students who were phenomenal in athletics and on their way to the professional route, students
Mm.
who were, getting phenomenal internships and fellowships in the area of aerospace. So I was always looking for those star students, and I would sit down and interview them. And one of the students, he was from Cameroon, and one of his businesses was he was starting a skincare line. He wanted to put uh, more products on the market that would, properly moisturize, melanin skin, in particular for, some of us, darker skin, brothers and sisters. And, I had a really great interview with him. And one of the things he was telling me about, the platform that I'm on right now was exactly what you're saying. He said, look, you do really good interviews. This is probably one of the better and more comfortable interview that I've done. He said I've been doing close to 100 interviews, and
Oh,
I haven't
wow.
felt comfortable in that home, like I have in this interview. So he was saying, if you want to have your podcast, this is what he was telling me in like 2021. He was saying just start now and just get it going. Exactly what you're saying. I know
Yeah.
you feel like you need the cameras and the light and the microphone and all of that, but he said, man, I think you got enough to just get going and really start pumping out the content. And so he gave that very same advice, and I totally agree with you. I totally agree with him that, for my listeners, start where you're at, get the ball rolling, and things are just going to get better. Like fine wine, you'll bring in the income, you'll get the resources, the better technology will come, the bigger audience and following will come, and with all that, more professional and seasoned eyes will begin to see your material, and that's where you'll run into, possible investors and high level collaborators and potential sponsors who, can, bring that bag of money that can, help the process move a little better as well. So
Absolutely. Man, that's such good advice. That's such good advice that he gave you, because you are like, we've spoken, several times.
yeah,
And I remember the first time we spoke, I had heard about you, but I had never met you.
yeah,
But from the moment we started talking, it was like I had already known you for years.
yes.
And it's, you can take that for granted, like, he's a easy person to talk to, but it's like it's not easy to be an easy person to talk to, like
Exactly.
that's a skill, right? That's actually a skill.
Right.
So it makes sense that he said that,
Yeah.
Of course, of course.
And
Yeah.
I appreciate him for that. And even though at the very time that he was making that suggestion, I knew there were some things that I had to do. I still had to set up a platform. I still wanted to develop a trademark. And so when I did start doing the interviews, I could, over time, start including things like, merch, really nice merch to the audience, and some other things that will be coming along with the Quid Pro Fro platform. You know what I mean? So yeah, man. So
Well,
starting where
next
you're
time we
at,
do this, I want to have
yeah,
my Quid Pro Fro shirt on. So just
there
so
you
you
go.
know, like,
Okay, or
it's
hat
actually a
or
really
or
cool,
hoodie,
or hat. Yeah, no, let's for real do that, like for real.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We're gonna make sure to get you some for sure. So here's my next question. So, how did you develop the opportunity to either work for or partner with Netflix? How did that develop? Because
Well,
Netflix, is pretty big over here. I'm pretty sure it's big in Germany and Europe as well. So how did
oh,
that develop?
they reached out to me. They reached
Oh,
out to
nice.
me,
Okay.
and this, there's this thing called imposter syndrome,
Yes.
and I've suffered from that for a long time,
Yes.
and 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 that's to say that most things that have happened to me that have been good have happened to me without much effort at all, and part of it is just allowing things to happen. Sometimes
Yeah.
we convince ourselves that things can't happen
Yeah.
because we're not ready or we're not good enough.
Hmm.
Um, but by allowing, and allowing doesn't mean do anything. It means quite the opposite. It means get out of the way of what needs to happen and what otherwise would happen if you weren't blocking it. Because a lot of times this imposter syndrome tells us, oh, you know, we're not good enough
Mm.
to be seen by someone like Netflix, or we're not good enough to even like consider that as an option. Um, a friend of mine who I work with in the past, you and I are both acquainted with him,
Yeah.
and he works with various ad agencies in New York. A really good friend,
Okay.
and he put in a good word, you know, to someone that he knew that was working with Netflix because they were looking for an illustrator, and they reached out to me. I didn't even have a website at that point,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that was really a launch pad for me because the work that I did with Netflix, you know, it was new for me because they wanted kind of storyboard art for poster design, and
Mm.
you know, I didn't particularly enjoy the work, and it was very
Okay.
stressful.
Mm.
But it gave me an idea of what people on the other side of the fence do, and how good it had to be, because I would spend hours working on this stuff,
Yeah.
and they will get, hey man, we need you to change this and that and this, and I would go,
Oh.
oh man, you know, I don't know if I have enough time to change it, and they would go, well, can we just have a call? And we'd have a call, and I'd draw on my tablet, they would see what I was doing, and they would go, yeah, just erase this and draw that, okay, that's good, just send it our way. I was like, what do you mean that's good? That's not, in my mind, it wasn't good enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But like the image that I have, and I think it's a problem with artists or anybody who wants to be like the best of the best,
Yeah.
is we get in this habit of comparing ourselves with our idols. And we
Mm.
think that if we're not creating work that's on par with our
Mm-hmm.
idols, then we don't deserve to be receiving what our idols otherwise would be, you know, receiving, which is like names at the end of movie credits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Very quickly, I realized that that wasn't the case
Mm.
at all. In fact, a lot of the things that I would do that I would think were not good were often exactly what they wanted. And frankly,
Mm.
my desire to make things perfect would get in the way of someone
Mm.
wanting to work with me, because I was doing work that didn't feel real, it didn't feel authentic. And
Yeah.
often what's needed is this kind of loose, quick, you know, raw, you know, this thing that happens when you master the principles. You can
Yeah.
spend a lifetime mastering principles and never
Yeah.
create anything, just practice until you're dead, right?
Right.
And you
Yeah.
know, that's kind of what I thought I had to do, you know, and hopefully before I die, somebody pays me to do this thing that I'm still not good enough to do. But it's like,
Yeah.
no, when you get to a point where it's like you're good enough, you're good enough for somebody to say, okay, we want to work with this guy. And sometimes it's simply because the other guy we want to work with isn't available, or because we
Mm-hmm.
heard about this guy from this guy and we don't know, but let's give it a shot. You know,
Yeah.
if you're willing to just put yourself out there and do what's being asked. Do what's being asked. Don't
Mm-hmm.
do what you think is necessary to be worthy to receive whatever you're being offered, because that's not the same thing you're being asked to do. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
same.
Right. Right.
And that was the realization, right? And it comes back to the same idea, you know, start where you are. It's always the same. Get out the way, start where you are, and just practice being genuine and authentic. And
Yeah.
and what I find is that when you do that, things come to you.
Yeah.
I'm on this board right now of this international organization,
Mm-hmm.
and they asked me to join, right?
Mm.
And I go back and I look back at the best things that have been happening to me, the best things that have defined my quote unquote career the most, but I would extend that to my life, were things
Yeah.
that happened to me. They weren't necessarily things that I was like hustling to make happen, but it was just kind of got out of the way and just started where I was and just followed, you know, what I was interested in, just being authentic. You
Mm-hmm.
can't really go wrong with that. Even if you mess up doing that,
Yeah.
that's a really good failure to have. You know, those are the best failures to have.
I
So that's
agree. I
always,
agree.
you know, it's always the place to
Being
start.
your natural self, and you said two things that you know, I definitely want to piggyback on, which is, you know, you had a personal relationship with an individual who spoke on your behalf, And I have a lot of similar experiences too. Like anytime I've gotten some of some very quality opportunities in the workspace and what have you, it's always come from reference. It was never me trying to apply and trying to go to some event to meet some person. It was me just being myself, having a phenomenal conversation, you know, understanding that, opportunities are going to come. Sometimes our personality, our skill sets gravitates interest, and so we have to just work on being calm. We have to work on being confident within ourselves that we got something very important and very special to offer. And when the opportunity, knocks on our door, we're going to deliver. And that also took me a little time too, because, at one point in my life, I felt as though I had to be a perfectionist at what I did. It wasn't enough to give a whether it be content, help develop a product that was, B or B plus. I always thought, hey, why not always overachieve? Why not always strive to do A level or A plus level work? Isn't that what everybody wants? Isn't that what the champions, the best, are representing? And in some cases, yeah, they are representing the best. But then in other cases, sometimes when you position yourself or posture yourself to do A plus work, sometimes you scare away, opportunities because you might be getting an opportunity from an employer or a partner who, like you're saying, they just want that B level work, which is raw. It's not as detailed. You didn't go over it with a fine tooth comb 100 times. So I've actually had to learn to say, wait, whoa, hold on. Like I had to, this is a mind shift. I have to tell myself that in certain cases, when required and demanded to overachieve and give that A plus work, I'm capable of doing that. But I have to slow down and understand, is that required of me? And if that's not required of me, if what's required of me is possibly doing something that produces B or B plus work, if that is what is making the audience ecstatic, if that is what is getting the standing ovation, if that is what is selling out the arena, if that is what is driving them wild, then I have to throw my ego in the trash and I have to go with what is bringing the audience back again and again and again and again. And that is something that I really hope, those that will see this, will take a little bit of time to reflect on this because, you know, sometimes if you're not reflecting on these types of aha, conversations, sometimes you can find yourself making this era time and time again and thinking, where's the work? Where's the collaborators? And it's good to reflect on this point, produce the quality of work that will satisfy your audience base, that will satisfy your returning customer, your returning client, versus putting yourself in a mental battle with your greatest mentor, or your particular idol. That this is a learning lesson that even at my age, I still have to tell myself and remind myself of exactly what we're talking about, because it seems as though no matter how many times you go over this point, it's a battle, it's a wrestle, it's
Mm-hmm.
something that you have to find the proper balance to, or you may find yourself having to possibly restart or what have you. So this is definitely going to resonate with my audience. This is a good one.
Man, this is great. And I can just say,
Yeah,
like, from my vantage point, looking at you across the
yeah,
ocean, and seeing what you've done, and your approach to it, like, you have the right attitude. That's why it's such an honor for me to talk to you, because I feel like, it's that's why it's so easy to talk to you, because we're talking about the same thing, we're doing the same thing, we're
yeah,
activating the same, principles of,
yeah,
self-awareness and acceptance and
yeah.
allowing. And as you keep saying, and it's true, Black people, specifically from America,
Yeah.
we have a tendency to question that maybe a little bit more, like, am I good enough? Or
Hmm.
is this, something that people want? Or do they want the cleaner version, like the version without the locks? They want the
Right.
version, that's a little, and we ask those questions.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what ends up happening is we start to confuse who we are with what we think people expect of us. And it doesn't matter, like, what your race is or whatever. In
Yeah.
general, we
Hmm.
tend to confuse who we are with what we think people expect from us.
Hmm. Yep.
And that's the difference between, a beginner and a professional. The
Yep.
beginner hasn't realized
Hmm.
who they are yet. They're still trying to figure it out. And if they're doing a good job, they're not comparing themselves too much to other people. They're
Right.
focusing a lot more on, what they did yesterday and making sure it's better. And, you know, seeing what you do and being able to talk to you, I'm reminded of that, and it's an honor to have this discussion with you, because it reminds me of the things that I sometimes forget. We forget it,
Absolutely.
no matter how long we've been doing it. And it's good to talk to people. It's good to talk to people and have these kinds of discussions. So it's an honor for me to even, be in a position to help your audience. And I thank you for being able to remind me of that as well. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And before we go, I just have a couple more questions um to kind of round out the interview. But before
Hey,
I
let's
ask
go.
the
Let's
questions,
go. Yeah.
before I ask the questions, I definitely want to say, thank you for, definitely taking the time and sharing your knowledge and wisdom and again, just breaking it down in a way that, some of the brothers and sisters that are coming up and having to make that transition from student to professional and identifying how they're going to make a living, put a roof over their head, pay bills and what have you in this particular career. So definitely want to thank you again for that. Another question that I did have is this one. So do you see yourself maybe starting an academy where you could, be, or maybe, and let me know if you've already started, but do you see yourself starting an academy where you're taking on mentees and, maybe charging them a fee for perfecting their craft and their style and like you're saying, you and your wife, y'all have and I guess what I'm asking is more of the entrepreneurial corporate direction, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in our life we have to step back and think about the totality of all that we've done and ask ourselves, when is all of this going to intersect? Maybe it's going to intersect, when getting the call to accept a position, at Netflix, and that position at Netflix, or getting a call to assume a position at Comic Con here in San Diego, and that position
Mm-hmm.
just is the totality of all the experiences that you had, whether it be starting off doing caricature, having to go to Germany and go and find, 5, 10, 20 festivals and events and work each one and what have you. But the question is that totality. Do you see yourself doing something like being a lead illustrator, having mentees up under you, helping them to perfect their craft and their insight into bringing out the more subtle qualities, as well as,
Mhm.
being great at the aesthetics, and, maybe as a team that you've developed, putting your team out there to you know not just get a slice of bread, but try to get the whole loaf, bring in a bigger bag. Have you ever thought
Mhm.
about doing anything like that? I know that was a large
Yes.
question, but
No, that's a good one. It's
yeah.
really good question. You have such good questions.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, the answer is yes. I'm currently in the process of establishing an animation studio.
Okay.
Uh, Parts of that studio can be found online at snappyscience.com. That's the name of my studio. Our
Okay.
studio is currently composed of myself and my wife.
Okay.
And we've been expanding. That particular studio deals with explainer videos. It deals with infographics and graphic facilitation.
Hmm.
And so the idea that I had with that was to extend it into a studio, which would be composed of maybe 7 or 8 different individuals, not necessarily all located in the same place. As we know,
Okay.
we live in the age of Zoom calls and the internet, so a lot can be done that way.
Yeah.
There was a shift that occurred because I was well underway with starting this the better part of 2 years ago, and about a year into it, ChatGPT came out, and
Mm.
that really changed my whole idea of what and how I work. And so I've been using AI a lot in my work, and I'm
Okay.
finding that I'm able to get at least twice as much done with as much effort, and I'm able to function as an art director as opposed to a lead animator. And I kind
Yeah.
of wear both of those hats when I'm working on a project, which is more than one person is meant to do.
Mhm.
Artificial intelligence has been the thing which has allowed me to just be primarily an art director and an
Yeah.
editor, and I'm able to go in and edit images that I prompt AI to make. And I'm always taking those images and doing them in my style, the most authentic version of me, but I'm using AI to help me. And so I'm at this stage right now where I'm not really sure, what it's going to be. And frankly, I think this is the world as a whole is kind of in this stage where we're not really sure what's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 years because technology is advancing at a rate that's so fast. Who
Yeah.
knows if, you know, the stuff that I was doing a year ago is going to be needed, in the same way that it is today, and my interest in artificial intelligence and using technologies to augment the creative process is something that I pride myself in. I genuinely am interested in this stuff, apart from how it plays a role in helping me get clients and working more. I'm just genuinely interested in the technology. I'm kind of a
Yes.
sci-fi nerd, so like it's
Okay.
in
Okay.
my I'm there. Like I feel like we're about to enter the Star Trek next generation world. That's kind of where we are right now with the
Yeah.
universal translator. And you look at things like Sora, where you can make these incredibly realistic 3D worlds, and the
Mm.
idea of VR advancing into the next stage. And what I'm finding is
Yeah.
that these technologies can intersect in a way that allows us to create ways of communication and the ability to facilitate ideas that incorporates a whole slew of multimedia that currently wouldn't make sense right now without huge, Hollywood big budget, producers behind it. But we're entering that age where anybody can be
Yeah.
an art director. So I'm at the point where I'm like, let's see what we can do with it.
Yeah.
So, I, if you would have asked me that a year ago, the answer would have been, yeah, I'm making an art studio. The answer is, yeah, I'm still doing that, but I'm not sure what form it's going to be in. So,
Smart.
yeah, but I'm eager to figure out, how far I can go with this stuff, and how far it's going to go, right?
Yeah. No, that's a really great point, man. And I wanted to ask a follow-up. Um, Sometimes when learning about, AI and a lot of the new progress, like it almost seems like there's a new app where they're releasing like a new software, a new program like every day. And and so what I wanted to ask is, um, do you see do you see at any point the technology becoming a challenge, or do you always see the technology as this is, this is a this is a support mechanism? I've also spoke to folks who have, shared that, wow, like it seems as though they're releasing a lot of this stuff to try and replace people in the workplace. And I, similar to you, I'm always thinking, okay, that's not the right, I don't think that's the right thinking, but I think the proper thinking is study the different AI technologies and softwares that are coming out, identify how it can help you do your job, your task, a little better and a lot easier. But the question is how do you use these technologies to still maintain your authenticity and not use these technologies in a way that makes your product generic?
Oh, that's such a good question. There seems like two parts to your question, which is,
Yeah.
you know, how do you see this? And I think, we kind of answered that part of it. We both see it as something which could potentially, fast track what we're already doing. It could
Yeah.
potentially, um, you know, play a role in humanity's future, which is good. And
Hmm.
to say more than that would to go clearly into conjecture about what that would be and how long
Yeah.
it would take. And no one really knows. But what is clear is that, the first part of your question being, how do we perceive it and what it would mean, for us. Um, there's this quote from Friedrich Schiller that comes to my mind. He's one of the main reasons I'm actually here in Germany. And I'm sure you are very well aware of the works of Schiller,
Oh yeah.
even though we haven't discussed it. But it's something that I'm reminded of in times like this, because Schiller said he gave a lecture um, in the late or early 1800s. He gave a lecture called Universal History.
Hmm.
And Schiller was a famous playwright at this point in his life. He had already, published the Robbers and his famous Joan of Arc. He was, heralded throughout Germany as the German version of Shakespeare, right?
Yes.
The next Goethe. Goethe was an old man at that point, and young Schiller was inspiring Goethe to write poems about the future of humanity instead of where we are now and how things look. And in this lecture, the room was jam packed with all these young students who were studying history and philosophy and science. And Schiller gave this beautiful presentation. And a part of his presentation towards the end was this: he made a distinction between what's called the bread fed scholar and the philosophical mind.
Okay.
And he addresses both of those people in the audience, because he says many of the students who are here to listen to me speak fit in one of these two categories. You're either a bread-fed scholar or a philosophical mind. And he says to the
Hmm.
bread-fed scholar, pitiful mind, who with the noblest of all tools, science and art, desires and obtains nothing more than that of the day laborer, who,
Hmm.
in the kingdom of complete freedom of knowledge, carries an enslaved soul around with him.
Mm.
And there's something so profound about that, because the question isn't really what is AI and all these technologies going to mean
Yeah.
for us, but rather what are we seeing when we look at the future? And the
Yep.
philosophical mind sees all the possibilities in what the world could be, what the world can be if they create it.
Yep.
And the bread fed scholar is just thinking about making wages and working and jobs, and there's reason for that. That's not to criticize those people. We don't live in a world of ideas. We live in physical 3D reality.
Mm-hmm.
But all the great things about this physical 3D reality was created by people who had a vision of what the future was going to be. So we shouldn't be asking, what is the future going to be like? What are these technologies going to mean? A better question to ask is, what are we going to do with these technologies? How
Right.
are we going to create the future with them? Which is why I
Mm-hmm.
personally believe you and I are
Yeah.
able to have this kind of discussion on this level, because we're not getting stuck on that question, like, what does it mean for my job? And there's a lot of people in our community who are very concerned about these technologies because they can create Mona Lisas in 3 seconds that look,
Yeah.
in some cases, just as good. You couldn't even tell. The lost painting of Da Vinci, made it by AI in 5 seconds. It's
Might create
happening,
the might create the Mona Lisa faster and even sexier. So
I know, right? Let's go, right? She, and you've seen the Pope with the drip, right? These types of
yes.
images and what's going on. It's
Yes.
like, there's only two ways to view this: as
Yeah.
the end or the beginning. And it's
The
really a
beginning.
matter of your perspective, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
both. It's the end of what was, and it's the beginning of what could be. It's both
Yeah.
of those things. And what it could be
Yeah.
is what we create. And so, in a real sense, for me, it's curiosity, man. I am
Mm-hmm.
genuinely curious about seeing how far I can take these technologies and what way I can bend them and manipulate them to tell the stories that I want to tell, to explain the ideas that I feel need to be explained.
Mm-hmm.
And to the extent that they serve in doing that, I'm happy. And how could they not do that? How could they? Did you look at what they can do? How could they not be used for that?
Right.
Of course, they're going to be, people are going to lose jobs, and it's going to, of course, those things are going to happen. And that's not to make light of them. But my
Yeah.
God, the
Yeah.
future
Yeah.
is whatever we create right now, man.
Yeah. And I totally agree, man. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to ask because um and this is I'll wrap up in saying this that we just live during a time where you know we have to be a part of bringing what you just said to our community. Several folks and not from our community may not have this perspective, which they need, which is the healthy perspective. This is the natural and confident perspective that no matter what technology comes out, I have the capability to understand and master and manipulate that technology and use it to my betterment, to help grow the work that I'm doing, the projects that I'm working on. We have to share this mindset with our community. Because I have heard the other narrative, the bread fed, scholar narrative, and that's not a fun one. That's a narrative that just reeks of doom, reeks of not being able to unpack, all of, what the GPTs represent, and the Microsoft pilots, co-pilots, I believe they have their own version of AI as well. So yeah, man, like that's something I'm actually taking upon myself through Quid Pro Fro, through these interviews, is to tap in and make it clear that we can more than utilize these softwares and these technologies to do what the corporations are doing, do better work, do faster work, do more efficient work, you know what I mean? And use, this technology to serve as, our assistant, serve as our staff, because that's what it's there for. It's there to do the work of, an assistant or a staff. And it's very fascinating. And, these are very, very unique times to be in. And so I agree with you when you say, these next 3 or 4 years, like the technology is still coming out. Like we're still getting a hold of where it's going, what all impacts it can have, and how we can use it to our benefit. It's going to be a few years before the dust settles and we finally say, okay, you know, Chat GPT version 11 just came out within 2 years. Okay, woo, whirlwind. Like so.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, man, these are exciting times, and I'm looking forward to being active and learning about uh, what more I can do to help educate around these technologies that are coming out. With Quid Pro Fro, where we're going to be highlighting that specific conversation. We're also going to be highlighting information around financial literacy, because that's very important, and something that some of the audience, from our community, but just throughout the world, want to know more about ways to make passive income using these technologies and using, leveraging social media and what have you. And then last but not least, on this platform, there will be some conversations about geopolitics, what's going on around the world. Before you travel here, you might want to take a look at, whether there are any existing conflicts, what's the exchange rate, taking a look at a country's imports and exports and being a part of, helping to provide a country with its needs, and demands. So, you know, so yeah, man. So I'll be using AI to do portions of my show going forward. There's a particular segment that I want to do that I won't mention right now, but there's a particular segment that I'll have to play around with AI. So I'll have an animated helper, or when it comes to giving certain information, and you'll see it in some of the future videos. But I want to
Nice.
slowly start incorporating it in what I'm doing as well. So AI is a good thing, when we choose to make it, because it's here, and it's only going to become more influential in every part of our life. So yeah, man, that was I have one more question, and this is just a wrap up question. If you have any last words of wisdom, again, um, brothers and sisters from our community that are into illustration, that want to be open-minded to taking a leap of faith and going to Japan or going to South Korea, or taking a trip to Europe to explore a new career opportunity, what would you say? And I know earlier you said just start where you're at. But if they're thinking about, hey, if Chance made it in Germany, what, I don't want to start in California. I want to get up and go to Germany, or I want to get up
Yeah.
and go
Right.
to Japan, So
Right.
what would be your last words of wisdom for those folks?
Well, what I can say in a very specific way, the organization that I'm a part of, the International Forum for Visual Practitioners,
Mm-hmm.
is an it's an organization committed to bringing awareness to the greater world at large about the advantages of uh, graphic facilitation, most notably graphic recording, where you're drawing on a board as someone is talking and taking notes of that discussion and facilitating a broader understanding of what that is.
Mhm.
explaining the benefits of that to the larger business world, which is
Mhm.
becoming more and more aware of the benefits of having art in the business world for the sake of making sure that your work team is on the same page and that people, are moving forward with the same ideas. It's art is necessary, not just for making art, but for the understanding and communication of ideas. So the IFVP is an asset that's available to young artists as a way to become acquainted with what that is. There are tons of opportunities available in graphic facilitation,
Mhm.
specifically for individuals that are comfortable standing in front of an audience and drawing live.
Mm.
And, being able to spell is, kind of a requirement, but just knowing, and that's one of my challenges because trying to do this stuff in German is, I can speak German, but spelling in German is a whole different thing. So
Okay.
that's one thing I'm working on. So, it's
Okay.
fun to go to another country, but, you got to learn to, really speak the language if you want to be working with those
All
people a
right.
lot.
Yeah.
So, the opportunities are available in the United States for anybody who's based out of America who wants to pursue a career in graphic facilitation. Become a member, ifvp.org. Just become a member, and we have access. We give people access to, courses on what graphic recording is, what the history is. We even ping people on jobs that are available in the area that they live at, and jobs that are available in the area that they don't live at. And it's a good opportunity to just
Mhm.
get a plane ticket and fly somewhere new.
Right.
So that's one asset that's available. As far as looking for job opportunities specifically abroad, the pathway for that is not as clear. And aside from teaching English, if you decide to leave the bubble called America and that's where you're from and you want to start a life in another country, then the path is what you make it, frankly.
Mm. Mhm.
There's not many, pathways that have been carved out for people like us. And you won't find many people like us in, areas doing things. And
Yeah.
that is its greatest disadvantage, but at the same time, its greatest advantage
Yep.
because there is no competition.
Mhm.
You control the market, you become your own entity, and wherever you are, you stand out. And sometimes that may feel like a disadvantage, and it really depends on how you perceive it. But you know, being someone who's different in a place where no one else looks like you is free advertising wherever
Yep.
you go. And
Yep.
sometimes you don't want that, but you
Right.
get free advertising wherever you are. You don't got to do much for it. If you just
Right.
come a little bit competent, you're going to stand out. So
That's right.
follow your passion, take advantage of that free advertisement, and just know that, the people who are afraid of the future are probably not the ones that are creating it.
And we're gonna end on that note. That's a very, very um important message to end with, and I'm just going to repeat it. And I love that you said it. Those who are afraid of the future, and I'll even go as far as say afraid of the opportunities currently available today, are not those who are creating it. And for my audience on Quid Pro Fro, we want to continue to invite entrepreneurs, elected officials, seasoned professionals, star students, and local community activists who are not afraid of stepping up, taking on a challenge that's out of our comfort zone because we're determined to be among those who are creating the future. We are determined to be the ones who are deciding what is going to be on the menu. That is not easy. It takes a little extra elbow grease, but it's always worth it in the end to stand out. So thank you again, Chance, for joining me on episode 3 to talk about life as an illustrator and the 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 challenge of making a life for yourself and your family in Germany. Again, that is not something that a lot of brothers can say that they've done. And so I definitely applaud you for doing that. And, you know, we would love to have you back on the show to go in depth on what we talked about today, but to also talk about other pressing topics that our audience, you know, will share with me in the comments and things like that. So thank you again, brother, for joining me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Antoine. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely.